Hey there, welcome to Takeaway with Sam Okus, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I'm Sam Okus, editor-in-chief at NRN, and this is the show where I give you an all-access pass to the restaurant industry's most influential decision-makers. This week, I'm talking with Edmond Barseghian and Brian Simowitz, the founder and president, respectively, of Houston Hot Chicken, aka HHC. This brand has opened 24 locations in less than 4 years, and a big reason why is Edmond and his massive social media following. That's right, Edmond is a social media influencer who realized there was big potential in opening a business around a great hot chicken recipe that he developed with his sister. From the jump, Edmond had big plans for the brand, and with strategic executive hires like Brian, along with an investment from Savory Fund, HHC is well on its way to opening potentially hundreds of locations. Edmond and Brian joined the podcast to talk about how HHC was designed for a social media generation and how they plan to rise above a crowded hot chicken field. In this interview, you will learn more about why you shouldn't be surprised to see more influencer-led restaurants, why the right experts can turn your good brand into a great one, and why you shouldn't have to pay someone to say your restaurant is great. By the way, speaking of social media, I am excited to share a new way that you can access takeaway and other goodies, TikTok. That's right, I've launched a new TikTok channel where I will be sharing special insights from this show, but also some other exclusive content, including behind-the-scenes looks at my industry travels and experiences. Go follow me at Takeaway Sam. That is at Takeaway Sam. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it. Jumping now into my interview with Houston Hot Chicken's Edmond Barseghian and Brian Simowitz. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview as I will share my 7 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Okay, I'm sitting down with Edmond Barseghian, the founder of Houston, Texas Hot Chicken, aka HHC, and Brian Simowitz, the president of HHC. Guys, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having us in.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about HHC, the origin story of this brand, and the growth and what you guys have in store as a hot chicken player in a very hot category. And obviously the story, Edmond, starts with you and the origin story, where this brand came to be. Tell me about, I guess, take me back before HHC opened. What were you doing before? Were you in the restaurant industry?
No, not at all. I've done a lot of things before HHC. So I first went to school to UCR. I wanted to be a pharmacist. So I have a degree in microbiology. That's the background. I grew up in Sweden. In Sweden, my father was an Italian chef. He owned a few Italian restaurants. So that's my connection with restaurants. When we moved over here, he started a towing business. And in '08, during the recession, towing business wasn't doing well. Gas prices were up. People were towing their cars with rope instead of calling tow truck. So I decided to take a year off from pharmacy school and help my dad out with the business. He speaks English very well. His English was like half Armenian, half like a quarter Armenian, quarter Swedish, and 50% English. So it was like words all over the place. So I helped him out, got a state AAA contract, CHP contract, state park rangers, and freeway service patrol contract. So we went from a struggling 5 tow truck operation to a thriving 12 within the first year. So I saw potential and decided to stick around with the towing thing for a little bit before diving into pharmacy. Ended up about 6 years later. I lived at work for about 6-7 years straight. I had a bedroom, kitchen, bath, all that stuff upstairs. And we went from 5 tow trucks to 52, 5 locations. And then my father had a heart attack. He passed away. And I sold that business. Everything about that business reminded me of my dad. It was very nostalgic for me. So I sold that business, got into the oil field industry, and dabbled there for a few years, did well. And then after that, I started investing in real estate in Southwest Florida. Started building communities over there, 40, 60 houses at a time, little Section 8 low-income houses. And then the best thing ever happened, which was COVID. I moved back in home with mom and my sister. My real estate business has kind of taken a pause. And I was listening to a podcast, staying busy every day, just listening to podcasts, walking around the neighborhood with my dog for an hour because the gyms were closed. listened to a podcast. There was a podcast on Sweet Green. They were 93 stores at the time. They were worth $1 billion. And I always thought restaurants were the worst business to get into because that's what my father always said, right? And I would never see my dad growing up. The only time I got to see my dad was at the restaurant when mom would take us there after school because he'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go buy fresh produce for the day. This is Sweden, so things are a little different. You don't have daily trips coming to your stores. So he would go buy all the product and he wouldn't get home until like midnight. So I hardly got to see my dad. And we didn't really make a lot of money over there either. We middle class.
Mm-hmm.
So listening to this podcast, they were worth $1 billion. I was like, $1 billion, 93 stores. I was like, that sounds a little too good to be true, right? Meanwhile, while all this happened, I started buying some exotic cars. I became a race car driver. I built a social media following, a YouTube channel, Instagram. And so I had a little cult following, kind of. So I thought, if I were to open up a restaurant, these are just random thoughts that are going in my head. If I were to open up a restaurant, I would have the customers for it because, my followers might support anything I do. They would come to the restaurant. And all I have to do, as long as the food is good, all I have to do is just open up another restaurant and I'm getting 40, 50,000 new customers, right? Just open up in different markets. I was like, 93 stores doesn't sound that difficult. But started listening to other podcasts too. And then my mind's just going like all over the place. And then during COVID, my sister and I were making different dishes at home. And that's kind of what triggered it. One day I said, let's make a hot chicken sandwich. Every night it was a different dish. So that night it was hot chicken sandwich. I loved hot chicken. They were popping up in LA. And I would go about 5 times a week until I started getting stomach aches. I couldn't figure out what the stomach aches were. So I stopped eating. And then my sister and I, we pull up YouTube, and look how to make a hot chicken sandwich. Recipes there. You fry it. You dip it in oil, and then you put your seasoning on top, and you got the sauce and the coleslaw and all that stuff. So it seemed fairly simple. My sister went to Whole Foods, and she called. She goes, "The spiciest I can make it is a medium because all they have is cayenne pepper." I said, "Okay, that's it is what it is." And then she got home and she said, "You know what? I figured out how to make it spicier." I said, "How?" She said, "Well, we have to dip it in oil. I can infuse some spices. They had habanero and serrano peppers, so I could chop those up, put that in the oil, and it'll be spicier. So when we dip it, it's already spicy, and then we'll just put a little seasoning on top." I didn't think anything of this. So sure, just do what you want. You're the chef. She makes a sandwich, and the sauce, we went very different. Tangy, sweet. It's got a really good flavor profile to it. Fresh brioche buns. She made a sandwich, and I fell in love right away. I was like, this is the best, not just hot chicken sandwich I've ever had. This is the best chicken sandwich I've ever had. I liked it so much. She ended up making it for me for about 2 weeks straight. And then following, she goes, "Listen, dude, like I've had enough. Let's do something different. Let's make a steak tonight." We don't make another hot chicken sandwich until 4th of July, which is my birthday. I invited all my friends over. Instead of barbecuing, I thought, let's make a hot chicken sandwich. Let's do that instead. So we're having a pool party. My sister gets in the kitchen, makes us these delicious chicken sandwiches, and all my friends tried it, and they're all hot chicken connoisseurs. So they tried it. They go, "This is the best hot chicken sandwich we've ever had." Still don't think anything about it. I don't clean the dishes. Next morning, I go to clean the dishes, and the sheet pan, I'm not going to reveal too much, but the sheet pan, seeing the mess on the sheet pan and realizing what we do differently than every other hot chicken brand, was the reason I was able to eat this hot chicken sandwich for 2 weeks straight without getting a stomachache. I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting a stomachache. So I thought, okay, I have a unique recipe. It's the best hot chicken sandwich. Hot chicken's taken off. Restaurant industry sounds kind of interesting. This is all July 5th. I said, let me do some market research. I checked. Las Vegas was the closest big city without any hot chicken brands. So I thought, okay, let me go there. I can hit off the concept, start the concept there. I can blow it up and I'll expand nationwide. August 2020, I was already living in Vegas, so a month later, and found the first location, perfected the recipe, hired the staff, hired, marketing team, COO, Matt Rush, who works with Brian right now. He got me the contracts with US Foods. I know how to build a brand and I know how to build businesses, but I didn't know anything about restaurants. So I got experts in this industry, hired them early on before opening up, and they kind of, plugged and played every single one where they needed to be. August 21st, 2021, so an entire year later, we opened up the doors to our first store, and that year we were ranked the #1 restaurant in all of Las Vegas.
Wow.
And we had franchise inquiries right away. Started franchising. This business was always $1 billion. What I set off, that was always in my head. So to get to 200 plus units has always been the idea behind this business. So it was always going to be a franchise concept. And I think what's different about HHC is I started the restaurant concept with the idea that this is a business. This isn't just, a mom and pop restaurant that's going to pay my bills. If I make $10, $20, $50,000 profit each month from each store, I'll be happy. This was always going to be a big business. So I started off with that, and we got franchise inquiries like left and right, over 2,000 inquiries within the first year because of my following as well. So, my following kind of looked at it as Edmond has been successful in everything he's done, and this is the next thing that he's banking on. This is the next thing that he's putting all his effort into, and they want to do business with me. So we got a lot of inquiries, and just that's one side, but the food really speaks for itself. The food is the best chicken you can ever get. But what also made the business different was when I thought about it, I wanted the business to touch all 5 senses, right? Visually, when you walk into the restaurant, I wanted visually for customers to go in and think, wow, right? Make a story, tag HHC, just visual, like, look how cool this restaurant is, it's different, right? And then when they get the food also needs to look good. And then, they tag us a second time over there. So it gave us 2 opportunities to get a tag. Audio, I wanted the audio, like your hearing senses. I wanted audio to be different. All my stores have really good audio systems, really cool 5D music. Obviously, it's going to smell good. Fried bacon always smells good. And then the sandwiches had to be the right size. I didn't want sliders. I didn't want it to be too big. I wanted the sandwich to feel right. And the French fries too was very important for the French fries to have a nice crisp to it. We tried out over 100 different French fries. We ended up getting the best one on the market. And what's the other visual or sense that I'm missing, Brian? I got
sound, taste, smell.
Taste. Yeah. It had to taste good. So we got that one too. So our restaurants in this segment, QSR, they really stand apart. When you walk into the restaurant, you're like, this is a cool place. And something else I thought about was, our demographic is 16 to 35, right? This is Las Vegas. You have to be over 21 to go into casinos. So that's 16 to 21. What can I do to serve their purpose, right? Like, what's a cool date night spot for them? They also don't have a lot of money. And, I went back to when I was 16. I had maybe $20 in my pocket, right? So what would be a cool date night spot if I had $20, $25 in my pocket? This could be it. Cool music, upbeat music, neon lights everywhere, countertops that light up. It's just a cool date night spot for the younger crowd. And we're seeing that Fridays and Saturdays after 7 p.m., we get that crowd, which obviously helps with our AUV. So there was a lot of thought behind the concept before opening up the doors. And I think that's why we've been a great success. We're at year 3 right now. We're at 24 stores. And we have a lot of stores opening this year and a lot more stores that are going to open next year. But with that, I don't know much about restaurants. So I got lucky. We opened up in Salt Lake. One of our franchisees opened up in Salt Lake. And, we host a car show at every grand opening. That's my car background. So every grand opening, we have we have anywhere between 500 to 2,000 people show up. Lots of cars. We've thrown a car show that had over 5,000 people show up.
Wow.
Yeah, it shut down a main street in all of Las Vegas for city blocks. It was wild.
Police helicopters come in to try.
Yeah,
I'm sure
used everything. The police. We actually let them know. We gave them a notice, and they were cool with it. But we used choppers. It was it made a lot of news. It made a splash in Vegas, and that's always been the thing about HHC. Let's be trendy. Let's break the internet. Let's have people talk about us. So we opened up in Salt Lake. we had a car show, really busy. I didn't know that right across the street from where we opened up in Lehigh, Utah, is Savory's headquarters.
Mm.
The president of Savory had to go into the store, and there was a watch store in that shopping center. During his break, 20, 30-minute break, whatever, however long his break was, he just wanted to pop in the watch store, pick up his watch that was in there for repairs. The story is it took him 45 minutes to enter the shopping center and then cross our store and get to the watch store because that's how busy we were. The parking lot was packed. And they invest in new emerging hot concepts, and he's looking around. He's like, what the hell is going on? What is this? Like, this chicken place. How does this place have so many customers? So he goes back to the office and he tells the CEO and the founder of Savory Brand, tells Shauna and Andrew, guys, we need to really look into this concept. And then there's something different about this concept. You go try the food out. They wait, an hour in line to get the food. They try the food. They fall in love with the food. They cold call. They reach out to us. Hey, are you interested in expanding the concept? I said, yeah, of course. I think at the time we had 12 stores. This was about September of 23. Had 12 stores, 2 years in the business. They wanted to be a part of us. They made it super quick. I'm sure private equity funds, it takes a long time, but basically from September until the end of October 28th, we signed the deal. So they pushed it through. They really wanted us. And since then, in a year and 4 months, we've doubled in size, and it seems every year we're going to be doubling in size. That's our trajectory right now. With that, again, I know how to build a brand. I don't know too much about restaurants, P&Ls and all the stuff, food costs, and it's a lot of stuff. Right now, I know the basics, but how to perfect the recipe to save a little money here, save a little money there, how to make the restaurant more profitable. And I really just want to focus on the social media side of the business. So talk to the guys at Savory that said, look, why don't we bring on a CEO that's done this before? Not saying you're capped, but I felt like I was capped. Like where we're at, I've given this concept like legs to run, but let's put it on a jet and let's go to the sky. Let's go to the moon at this point. So we interviewed a bunch of CEOs and CMOs from different concepts. Brian worked at another chicken place with 330 stores at the time. And we were fortunate enough to snatch him away from there. So he jumped ship, and now he's part of HHC. And he has almost doubled our profits in the short, 5-6 months that he's been with us. So now we're an extremely profitable concept, and the unit economics make a lot of sense. So now we are getting ready to push franchising. Just with Savory, the last year we've been working on, let's make sure that when we do sell these franchises, that we can get the bigger groups, and that the bigger groups are going to be really profitable. So that's what we've been working on. And hiring Brian, he just put a steroid shot to that and got us there in 5 months. So
yeah. And Brian, I imagine that you saw a lot of potential in this brand when you got that knock on your door. What were you thinking?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sam. So, I get calls all the time, and I never really pursued any of them. It's funny, I had met Andrew Smith several years earlier, so I knew who he was. And when I got the call, I said, sure, I'll talk to them, and had a great call, first with Edmond and the brand president, Tyler from Savory. And they asked me to come out to Salt Lake City and meet with them. Went out and met with them, and just the synergy of that team. I sat with the whole executive team in a boardroom on a Saturday morning. It just felt right. I never thought I was going to leave my last job. I thought that was my last stop. I'd been there for 10 years. I joined when they had 12 restaurants, and like Edmond said, we grew it to over 300. I was blown away by these guys. And then we went to Houston Hot Chicken for lunch, and I hadn't had HHC yet. So what Edmond said about the best chicken sandwich, 100%. It is the best chicken sandwich. So those two factors, the team at Savory, spending time with Edmond, and the restaurant, it was a no-brainer for me to jump ship and come over to HHC.
And did you think, Brian, at the time, I mean, obviously Edmond's put a lot of thought into obviously the five senses of what you get when you go into an HHC. I mean, there's a lot of thought that's gone into it already. But Brian, did you think when you walked into it for the first time, here's what I would do, here's what I think needs to happen? Were you inspired to leave your own fingerprints on this thing?
No, not really. I think Edmond and the team, look, Edmond brought on some great people early on with this organization. He talked about Matt Rush, Mario Drezzo. Those are two of the executives. One is vice president of marketing, and Matt is the vice president of operations. They're phenomenal. And I couldn't have asked for a better team to jump in with. And then with Edmond as well and his guidance, I really did not feel like I needed to put my fingerprints on it. But Edmond touched on the fact that our goal was to really improve the unit level economics. So we jumped in and really started working on how can we make this thing even more profitable and make it a good proposition for potential franchisees.
Edmond, there's sort of a blissful ignorance that underlies a lot of what you've done here, which is great for the sake of, there's a lot of things you just kind of went for it without thinking of what was standard, what had been done before. How hard was this supposed to be? When you go into it thinking, I'm going to open 93 stores and be $1 billion, sure, no big deal. But also with hot, chicken, there's sort of the authentic Nashville. You just kind of made a hot chicken that was delicious, and that was what mattered. So I'm curious, Edmond, now that you do have 24 locations, do you feel like that approach still works for you guys, where you can just, hey, let's do what works, this feels right, and don't fix it if it ain't broke? Or have you learned a few things over the last 4 years that you've been in, about 5 years, I guess, almost, you've been in business now, that you feel like you've fine-tuned some of this? What's your approach, I guess, to how you want to scale this thing now?
Yeah. So, I touched that I'm from Sweden. So everything in Sweden is, it's farm to table, right? That's always been very important to me. So when I started off the concept, it has to be authentic to me, right? So I'm a race car driver. I'm racing in Europe this summer, this season with Porsche. So I have a car theme, right? Car shows, and you walk in, the artwork is a race car driver, me with a helmet on. We have portraits of cars everywhere. So it had to be authentic. Now with that, it had to be authentic with me being from Sweden, right? Everything had to be all natural. I don't want anything frozen in a restaurant. I want to stick to those were like my key points. It had like the food. I understand it's fast food, it's fast casual, QSR, but I want elevated food. I want a restaurant that I could eat at myself. I crave food like this all the time, but I'm very health conscious. I understand it's fried food, it's fried chicken. There's it can only be so healthy, but let's make it the healthiest it can possibly be, right? So those are things that I stuck to very early on. Now, of course, I wanted organic chicken, but then you come find out, okay, the only organic chicken farm is Mary's, and they're on the East Coast. By the time they ship it, they can ship it, but they're gonna have to freeze it. I didn't want frozen, so we found all natural, never frozen farms around, and that's the route we went. But Brian came, so I have when I made a deal with Savory, it was very important for me to stick true to the concept. So I got veto rights on everything as far as it comes to the concept. I wanted to make sure this private equity fund doesn't come in and give me frozen chicken, give me this, give me that. These are not things that I could stand behind, and this is not what I want, right? I want elevated food at a great price to consumers. Now Brian comes in. I have no idea that if you change the seasoning to this, Brandon said, you can save so much money. And, if you change this, tweak this, tweak the batter, tweak the marination, do this, change something, we can save 4 points. What? Like these, if like, that's where, ignorance, that's, I had no idea, right? You don't know what you don't know until the next expert comes in and he really starts tweaking these things. And next thing you know, you're making 11% more. It's like, how'd you pull out? Where'd you get 11 points in like 5 months? Like I thought we were very profitable before. It turns out we could be so much more profitable, and we're still making some tweaks over there. But yeah, 93 stores. Very. I mean, it's not that it's doable. It's going to happen. But yeah, our trajectory in the next 5 years, we're going to be touching 200 stores. So it's been an easier road than I thought, but I think the concept speaks for itself. And when you go into the store and when you try our food, that's when you understand. You're like, okay, cool. I get why this concept is a hit. But that's because there was a lot of meticulous thought put into the store, put into the concept before opening up. Had I just opened up, a random store, at first I thought, while the store is opening up, we bought a lunch truck. I wanted to have a lunch truck and go from there into a restaurant. Then I thought about it. After this is after spending over $100,000 on the shop. Like, is that what I want the brand to be? No, that's not what I want. I want to be elevated from day one. So, we lost a lot of money early on, a lot more than I wanted. I wish I had hired Brian very early on, but these are growing pains. These are things you learn. In the end, the road's good. Of course, like every concept, we've had bumps along the way, but the road's been paved and the highway's looking straight as possible. There's gonna be some curves, I'm sure, but yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. Brian, I mean, obviously, chicken very well, having come from another chicken brand. Hot Chicken, of course. I mean, I'm sure you were watching Hot Chicken before you got the call from HHC. So you see what's happening in the space. Tell me about, I mean, obviously, look, great product. So that's always key to building a restaurant brand. But knowing the chicken category, Brian, what did you think about how HHC would rise above, not only rise above the noise to the consumer, get their attention, but rise above the noise for the franchisees, potential franchisees who want to invest? What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because, as I said earlier, when I went into the restaurant for the first time, I was absolutely blown away. And I felt like with what Edmond's done with social media and some of the viral content that they've created, the atmosphere in the restaurant, the quality of the food, the car culture following, it was going to be an easy point of differentiation from all the other crowded, segments out there with hot chicken, right? There's a lot of hot chicken restaurants, as you said, but we have so many different things that differentiate us from those brands that I didn't feel like it was going to be a problem to really stand out in the crowded marketplace of hot chicken.
Yeah. Well, and Edmond, to that point, I mean, again, the following, this is like every restaurant's dream right now, right? Everybody's hiring the influencers and trying to create the content and trying to, find the audience that's going to, fall in love. If you could use one example right now, Chili's. I mean, who would have thought a couple of years ago that we would all be talking about Chili's all the time right now? But through very creative marketing and capturing, especially the TikTok and Instagram content, they've built some momentum. So, Edmond, you clearly understand a thing or two about how to use content to benefit a business, as you are, to benefit a brand. What has been key there that you've launched a business and scaled it to 24 locations in under 5 years using this audience? Why has that been so successful? What were they looking for that you've given them in HHC?
Good question, Sam. Like it all goes back to social media, like understanding the importance of social media, right? There's probably 50 concepts that open up on a monthly basis, right? In your city. I'm sure, I know definitely in LA, every month there's 50 new restaurants that open up. I don't know all these 50 restaurants. I've never even heard of them, right? I hear about two. How do I hear about the two? Well, on Instagram, right? There's this place in LA that it's in Van Nuys. It opened up a few months ago. I never drove to Van Nuys. I live in LA right now, but Van Nuys is 20 minutes in the wrong direction from me. All my friends live this side. Van Nuys is that way. But I saw their posts on social media. Food looks good. Let me go try it out. So I drove 20 minutes out of my way to go try this food out, and sure enough, food's great. But I would have never heard about that concept if it wasn't for social media. I recently bought a new car. This is a brand that I had never heard of. I mean, I'd heard of it before, but I never thought of purchasing this car. They'd gone out of business in 2008. It's a very small brand. They made 200 cars. But I saw a viral post about that brand on social media, and I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, you know what? I just remember this car. Wow. Let me go look into it. But again, I would have never had this car in my garage if it wasn't for the social media posts on Instagram, right? So just understanding those small things that, hey, you really need to be at the forefront of social media. You need to be in front of people's faces. People spend 2 hours a day on their cell phones, right? That be there. So just understanding that. And then, because I am an influencer, my circle of friends, or at least, the Rolodex of people that I have on my contact list are also influencers. So when I started this concept, hey, I've helped them out. I've promoted their business or whatever products they've been promoting. I've always been a giving person. I've always helped them out. So whenever I open this concept out, it's not that they owed me a favor, but they wanted to, return the favor. So all my friends started posting about HHC, and it's not just my following; it's my surrounding of people that I have and their followings that now know about HHC. And once I get a customer in the door, my number one thing, and Brian always talks about this, is we need to make sure the customer goes back into the door 3 times, back into the restaurant 3 times. If we get them in the third time, they're a loyal customer. So, going back to the restaurant, all these, I wanted to touch all the senses to make sure the customer returns. That it's not just a one-time customer, because on social media, you can have a viral video pop off. And if your food isn't good, if your customer service isn't good, the place isn't clean, they'll come in, they'll try it once, but they're not going to come back.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't matter how good you are on social media. If you cannot get that return customer, it's just a one-time post at that point. You're always chasing a new customer. So just applying some common business sense into the restaurant along with social media, because it's not just social media. Those are the things that have made us successful.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, our hospitality is another point of differentiation. We provide hospitality at a level that most fast casual restaurants don't provide.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's something to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, Edmond, about social media. I mean, the other thing about social media, obviously, as you know better than anybody, is how fleeting it is, and how a viral trend may come and go in the space of 24 hours. And so I'm curious for HHC, and I guess this question is for both of you, because Brian, you are probably thinking about this too. I mean, how do you build a movement on social media? You capture their attention, but you sustain it to build a long-term business. Because as you know, and as you were explaining, Edmond, you can't have people come in once, try it, post the picture and say, been there, done that, and move on to the next thing. They've got to keep coming back. What's the secret to doing that?
Well, I think the secret is we continue to have fresh content all the time. Edmond does a really good job of leading the charge with that and making sure that we had a video that just went viral. We had 45 million views, Edmond?
Yeah.
It's incredible, right? So if we can continue to have that content and then we execute with the quality of food and the atmosphere and the hospitality we talked about in the restaurant, they're going to keep coming back.
Yeah. Edmond, what do you think about that do you listen, I as somebody who knows, as a content creator myself, I'm constantly thinking, oh, what do I do? How do I create video? There's a pressure to it, right? There's a pressure of get the next one. Edmond, how do you feel about that now from a business standpoint? Because clearly from your race car driving days, that's a little bit more about you as a person probably. But now with HHC, you're thinking about this from a brand perspective. How do you make sure you can get through that pressure and keep creating that content that gets them to come through the doors?
Yeah. So audience smells bullshit, very, very quick, because, if you're hiring an influencer today, hey, come try this place, the best chicken sandwich in the world. Right. And then next week, another chicken place hires that influencer, and, now that concept is the best chicken in the world. Or come try this burger. Every day, foodie influencers are always promoting different businesses, right? Foodie influencers were great 5 years ago. It's still, till this day, it's very good because it gets the word out, right? But their audience doesn't necessarily believe their words. Come try this place, it's the best. So visually, the sandwich, it's called food porn. Visually, it's got to look good. It has to make your mouth water just looking at it. If you can capture that, then it doesn't matter what the influencer says, right? But if they're shooting your content, and that's why Mario and PJ, my marketing guys, I always tell them, make sure the food looks great. Make sure the sauce is dripping. It has to be visually appealing. You basically have to be able to taste the food just from a video. And that doesn't matter what the influencer says. And then it doesn't matter what other brand influencers go into market afterwards. Sticking to that. And also, like myself, as an influencer, I've never promoted any other brand, ever. I get offers all the time. Promote our brand, $10,000 here, $15,000, $20,000. I decline every single one of them. I only promote my own brand. And because of that, my following, they don't sense any BS, because there is no BS. I made sure the concept was 100% me, so that I can get behind it and push it 100%, authentically. I think that's been our thing, as well as being on top of trends. I slowly going away from hiring influencers because they're promoting everyone else, and let's make our social media page our own. Right?
Mm. Yeah.
Let's have our employees be the characters. Let's have our employees be the influencers. Let's me be the influencer. My girlfriend comes in and makes a video with me. Let us be the influencers. Let's grow our page as opposed to someone else posting on their page and tagging us.
Mm.
Right. Let's have our video go viral instead of this video go viral and then just get tags from this or mentions from this video. Let's make sure our video is the one that goes viral. So that's what we've been focusing on recently, going away from influencers, because influencers, like I said, were great 5 years ago, but their impact is going to decline because they're saturating the market, in my opinion. Right, Sam, how can you go tell your followers, come try this place, and then next day you get paid by another restaurant concept, and hey, come try this place. Like, wait, which one am I supposed to try? Am I supposed to believe you on this one, or am I supposed to believe you on this one? So that's kind of been our marketing direction recently.
Attention spans are very short, and you only have so much time with an audience before they lose interest and go over to the next shiny thing. I want to talk about growth because I know Savory very well. I know Andrew and Shauna, wonderful, wonderful organization, wonderful people. Now, one thing I know about Savory is that they prioritize corporate-owned restaurants, not necessarily franchises. So obviously, you guys were already off to the races with franchising when they were introduced to HHC. Is corporate growth in your future at all, or have you guys worked with Savory to figure out what this could look like from a franchise perspective?
Yeah, we're going to continue to open company restaurants. Our main growth vehicle is going to be through franchising. We have 2 restaurants under construction right now, one in Las Vegas and one on Camelback Road in Scottsdale, Arizona. So those are our 2 company markets that we're going to continue to grow. There might be a third in the future, but most of our growth is going to come through franchising.
Okay, so thinking about this future, Edmond, you said doubling in size every year, which is incredible, not impossible, for the growth trajectory we're already on. And by the way, being in the chicken category alone is kind of like a cheat code right now that you can be able to really maximize the demand for chicken and especially for hot chicken. But Edmond, I'm curious. I mean, you listened to that podcast from Sweetgreen and you heard 93 locations and $1 billion valuation. But now you're thinking 200 locations, 300 locations. Like, that's not impossible. What does V2 of HHC look like? Because you built the thing. Now, as you guys go into the future, what do you want to do with it now going forward?
Yeah, so V2 is obviously international expansion. I mean, first, right now, V1 is national expansion. We're opening up in a few different states this year, a few markets. Next year, we're going to open up in a lot more states. But I want to go international. That's V2 for me, is international growth. Like I said, I'm from Europe. I can't wait to be in Europe. That's what I'm really looking forward to. And the cool thing about Brian, one of the number one things that I liked about Brian, except his exceptional hair, the suspect.
You guys have a competition anytime?
I think I got him beat up. One of the things I really liked about Brian, the concept that he came from, they've already expanded internationally. They're in Germany, they're in London, in England.
Turkey.
So Turkey, yeah. He has, so that's almost Middle East, right? Eastern Europe, Northern Europe, Central Europe. He knows how to expand a brand internationally. The brand that he came from, it's been a couple of years now, or 3 years that they've been international. So I thought with him, we can grow nationally and then internationally as well. So that would be V2 for me.
Okay. All right. Last question for you guys. I'll have it both answer it. Thinking we're 7 or 8 weeks now into 2025. Generally, I think the tone of the year is cautious optimism. I mean, obviously, everything that's happened in the past 5 years has been a real roller coaster. Perhaps the roller coaster continues, but generally cautious optimism. Brian, starting with you, what do you hope to have accomplished by the end of 2025 for HHC?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sam. I think for me, by the end of 2025, obviously, we talked about unit level economics. We still have some more work to do. We think we can even improve the profitability even more. And then, our goal now is next month, we're hiring a director of franchise sales, is really to start selling franchises. like Edmond said earlier, we have thousands of inquiries that come in on a regular basis. So we're going to start sorting through those and start bringing on franchisees to really grow this brand. And that's how we're going to double in size every year for the next 2 or 3 years, is by bringing in qualified restaurant operators to help us grow.
Edmond, final word. What do you think about this year and what you hope to accomplish?
Just continue growing in the correct direction. That's like I said, the road for the first time is looking very straight. I can see where we're headed. Every brand, expands, and then there's a consolidation period, and then expands again. There's a little consolidation, and then expands again. We are at this expansion period right now. I've never been more optimistic about this concept than I am today. Pleasantly surprised with the direction it's going in. So yeah, 2025 for me is going to be our breakthrough year. It's going to be the year where we sign a ton load of franchises, get a lot of commitments, and then 2026 is when these commitments are really going to go into show and go into fruition and open up. It takes I'm sure Sam, it takes between signing a contract between 6 and 18 months to open up a restaurant. By the time you find it and open it up. So 2026 is going to be our big growth period. But everything we've done this past year with Savory and with Brian these last 5 months has laid the foundation down. I built a cool concept, but now we built the foundation, and now we're getting ready to take off. So 2025 is looking good. Yeah, I'm excited for it. I know everyone's a little worried about the economy. The food industry is recession proof. It becomes a luxury item when you cannot afford a real luxury item. People want to go out, they want to enjoy themselves, they want to have a good time, they want to converse with people, friends, peers. Restaurant's a perfect place to go.
They got to eat somewhere, and they should sure. I love it.
That too.
Edmond Barseghian and Brian Simowitz, guys, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
for having us on.
It's been a pleasure.
That was my interview with Houston Hot Chicken's Edmond Barseghian and Brian Simowitz. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 7 takeaways. My first takeaway is that big goals can be the spark that you need to drive growth. Edmond was already successful in a number of fields before he launched HHC. But when he got into this business, part of it was a podcast he listened to that he was inspired by, which was featuring Sweetgreen. And at the time, Sweetgreen had 93 locations and was a $1 billion valuation, as Edmond explained in the interview. And when he heard that, he thought to himself, hey, 93 locations and $1 billion, I could do that, because who among us doesn't think that when we have a business idea? But Edmond could put his money where his mouth was, because he had such a big following already and had been successful in a couple of other fields. So he set this goal for himself. In his head, he said, 93 locations, $1 billion. Let's chase that. And when he launched HHC, it wasn't let's do one restaurant and maybe we'll see how it goes. It was, this is going to be that $1 billion brand. Today, they have 24 locations, although by the time you're hearing this, perhaps they already have more, because they have several locations opening in 2025. And Edmond and Brian believe that in 5 years, they could have 200 locations and blow past that 93 unit mark that he talked about with Sweetgreen. So set your own big goals. If you want to be a 200 unit brand, if you want to be a $1 billion brand, set it as your goal and chase that goal, because if you light that spark and chase that dream, it could really, again, sort of drive that momentum that you will need to get there. My second takeaway is that you shouldn't be surprised if we see more influencer-led restaurants. Listen, we've talked about social media influencers a lot on this show and at NRN in general. And there's no doubt that this is not a trend, not a fad. We will continue to be hearing from social media influencers. Influencers will be the media through which we learn the news, through which we learn about trends, through which we see the world in more and more ways, which could be terrifying in some ways, but is also exciting in other ways. One of the ways that could be exciting, and I think certainly is with HHC, is that you have people like Edmond who have built massive followings and then can put those followings to use through business. So Edmond probably is not the only person who says, hey, my marketing is already done for me, essentially, because I have hundreds of thousands of people who follow me. Marketing's taken care of. And now I just need to come up with an interesting, creative, and quality business. And that's what he did. Don't be surprised if more influencers see that same potential, tap into their audiences, and launch successful businesses. My third takeaway is that your restaurant experience should hit all five senses. So when Edmond launched HHC, he said he wanted it, of course, to taste great, but then he wanted the visual experience in HHC to be incredible. He wanted it to smell great. He wanted the sounds to be the right fit for what he was creating, even the feel of everything. Again, it's the five senses that he wanted to really pop, to really resonate with guests, so that when you come in and your five senses are engaged, first off, you're likely to post about it. You are very likely, especially with the visual part of things, and perhaps the sound part of things, you want to share that on your social media. And again, do the marketing for the restaurant. But also, you're going to want to come back. You're going to become a loyal follower because you will remember, it will be memorable how that experience felt in all of those senses. You'll want to come back. So you're creating loyal guests, which of course is important, and we'll talk more about in a bit. But also, you're creating something that's shareable. And so your guests are going to do that marketing for you on social media. My fourth takeaway is that big marketing stunts can get the customer's attention and the investors. So Edmond talked about the fact that HHC will have a car show with every store opening, and it draws a lot of people. In some cases, so many people that the police have to get involved, as he talked about it, and in one instance in Vegas. And, it's a big event, an experience that people want to come and check out. That gets people's attention. The customer is drawn to some big thing that everybody's going to, like a car show. So they show up, they check out your restaurant, they love it, and they're going to want to come back. But I love the story of how they opened in Lehi, Utah, right by Savory Fund's offices, and it got their attention. Now, that is an incredible stroke of luck. Savory Fund, we've talked to a number of their leaders, but especially, of course, Andrew Smith, the managing partner there at Savory Fund. And this fund, this organization is just on an absolute tear, investing in several exciting emerging restaurant brands. So to think about opening up right by their headquarters, again, you almost couldn't have planned it better to do that, because it caught Savory's attention and they wanted to invest in HHC, which they did. The point here, though, to take away, again, is have a big grand opening when you open your restaurant. Do something that gets people's attention. It may not be next door to the investor that you really want to partner with, but it at least will get the customer's attention and the right people coming to get your restaurant off the ground in a successful way. My fifth takeaway is that the right experts can turn your good brand into a great one. So Brian Simowitz is president of HHC, and he had been previously at Slim Chickens before he was brought in to serve in this role. And, Edmond, of course, has a great vision for the brand, clearly had started something very successful. And, you can say he's the visionary here. But he had not run a business before like this. He had not run a restaurant business that was scaling, that was growing, and Brian had. So by bringing Brian and some other executives into HHC, you really mature the business and put the right people in place who know what they're doing. Your business might be that too. I've talked to so many founders as part of Takeaway, and I love talking to founders because, as I've said before, they are the beating heart of their business. But a founder can only get you so far sometimes. Sometimes what you need is a better business mind who catches your vision, who has the passion for your brand as you do, but can systemize that and can scale that. So if you have a good restaurant, but it's not great yet, think about maybe putting some other people in place who can take you from good to great. My sixth takeaway is that no matter how good you are on social media, you have to convert new guests into loyalists. So Edmond says he thinks that, 3 visits turns a customer into a loyal customer. You can get them in the door once with a social media post. You can do these marketing stunts, post great content on social as HHC is doing, and it will get them in the door. But if you want them to keep coming back, obviously you have to create that great experience. But Brian and Edmond both believe with 3 visits, they've crossed over into, okay, this is a part of my routine, a part of my rotation, my restaurant rotation. So think about how, first off, leverage social media to draw people in, show them what you're about, yes. But then wow them with that great experience, get them to come back. Maybe it's with a loyalty program or just providing that great experience, or both, obviously. And then if you can get them in 3 times or more, you've hooked them. They're coming back and they've worked you into their regular restaurant rotation. My seventh and final takeaway is that you shouldn't have to pay someone to say your restaurant is great. It felt almost ironic that Edmond said this, but I appreciate that he did, which is that he said, he's phasing out paying influencers to come check out HHC. In his mind, it feels disingenuous. It feels inauthentic because what you have is somebody, say you have an influencer in Las Vegas, you pay to come check out the restaurant, rave about it on their social, but then they go to another restaurant and rave about it because they're paid to go do that. And it just feels like it was all sort of forced. And as Edmond said, people on social media, they have a BS detector. They can tell when it's BS, right? So don't rely too heavily on paying influencers to come check your place out. Edmond said something I thought that was really smart, which is use your employees as the influencers. Use your team as the influencers. The restaurant itself is the influencer. Create the content yourself and create the experience that people can't help but turn into content. Don't force it through paid posts unless you absolutely have to. Do it with what you have on hand, because if you do that, it'll feel authentic and organic, and people will respond to that more than if it was paid. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.okas@informa.com. And don't forget, we're on TikTok now. Go follow me at TakeawaySam. Thanks again, and talk to you next week.